You're just a good-for-nothing homeless person. Stop embarrassing yourself here.
John, a veteran who had risked his life on the battlefield, now found himself homeless and constantly bullied on the streets. These harsh words pierced his heart like a sharp blade. But what happened next completely turned his life around. Hey everyone, welcome to Worldly Whispers. Let's get started. For over 17 long years, John Turner, a homeless man, wandered the streets. His gaunt figure, sunken eyes, and emaciated body told a tale of hardship. In his trembling hands, he held a cardboard sign that read, "Used to be someone, but no one paid any heed." By a bustling shopping center, John hoped for help from passers-by. A well-dressed man approached, and for a moment, John thought his luck had turned. However, the man sneered at him, kicked over his begging cup, and scattered the meager coins. John painfully picked up the coins, filled with humiliation. Hungry, he walked to a hot dog stand, trying to buy some leftovers with his few coins. But the vendor drove him away. When passing a fountain, he wanted to drink some water, only to be shunned by a young mother. In the park, a group of children pointed at him and even planned to play tricks on him. Fortunately, the teacher stopped them in time, but the look of disgust in her eyes still pierced his heart. In despair, John recalled his past. He once had a family and a job, but now he endured cold looks and bullying on the streets. Just as he was completely crushed by the hardships of life, the sound of a familiar guitar melody reached his ears, a tune he loved in his youth. He couldn't help but hum along, and memories of the past flooded back. After the song ended, he put his precious $1 bill into the young musician's guitar case, briefly feeling a connection with another human. To fill his stomach, John went to the alley behind a supermarket, hoping to find some discarded but still edible food. However, another homeless man was already rummaging there. The supermarket manager showed up, not only drove that man away, but also pushed John to the ground and spoke harshly to him. This scene triggered John's warm memories, and he fell into a panic, collapsing to the ground. Coming back to his senses from the memories, John was physically and mentally exhausted. Lured by alcohol, he entered a liquor store. He used his last money to buy the cheapest beer and gulped it down, trying to drown his sorrows. Then, he came to a bench in front of a restaurant and fell asleep under the influence of alcohol. Soon after, the restaurant owner woke him up and drove him away, pushing him back onto the unforgiving streets once again. John wandered aimlessly on the street. The sun was high in the sky, and his hunger grew more intense. Suddenly, a luxury car pulled over, and three well-dressed men got out. One of them, a man in an emerald blue vest, looked at John, and something strange flashed in his eyes. He took out a few dollars from his wallet and handed them to John, saying, "Take this and buy yourself something to eat." John took the money with trembling hands, filled with gratitude. With the money, John headed to a pizza shop. There was a queue outside, and he joined the end of it. People around him showed disgust at his ragged appearance, some even covering their noses. When it was finally his turn, just as he was about to order, a woman shrieked, "This smell is disgusting. It's ruining my appetite." The clerk also chased him away, saying, "Homeless guy, you're bothering my customers. Get out of here." John tried to explain that he had money, but the woman pointed at his beard and claimed there were lice. The whispers of the crowd made him feel ashamed, and he had to leave dejectedly. After being driven out of the pizza shop, John's hope was shattered again. The familiar despair and pain rushed back like a tide, and he felt abandoned by the world once more. At this moment, only the temporary relief of alcohol came to his mind. So, he staggered back to the liquor store. The clerk, seeing him, sighed in resignation and silently handed him the cheap beer. John exchanged the money for food with alcohol and took big gulps, as if only this could make him forget all his troubles. Slightly drunk, John returned to the area near the bench where he had slept before. At this time, the three men came out of the restaurant. Seeing the alcohol in John's hand, one of them said, "See, I told you he would use your money to buy alcohol. These people are all the same." The man who had given John money earlier showed a flash of disappointment and regret in his eyes. He looked at John for a long time, as if he wanted to say something, but finally just shook his head and got into the car and left. John watched the car drive away, filled with self-blame. He knew he had disappointed the kind gentleman, but in this cruel world, he was already used to escaping reality with alcohol. Suddenly, the sky darkened, the cold wind howled, and raindrops began to fall. John had nowhere to go. He remembered that the bench in front of the restaurant had a canopy to shelter from the rain, so he dragged his heavy steps towards it. Under the influence of alcohol, John soon fell asleep on the bench. However, not long after, the restaurant owner appeared with the police. The owner shouted angrily, "How many times have I said, keep these homeless people away from my storefront?" The police blew their whistles, trying to wake John up. John woke up groggily. Facing the owner's accusations and the police's authority, he was terrified. Just as the police were about to take him away, the familiar black SUV appeared again. The man in the emerald blue vest stepped out of the black SUV. He quickly told the restaurant owner and the police that he knew John and asked them to let John go. The restaurant owner, who had been eager to please the wealthy-looking man, immediately agreed and withdrew his complaint. The police, seeing the situation, removed the handcuffs from John's wrists and left. The man then turned to John with a gentle look. "Can we talk for a while?" he asked. John, still dazed from the sudden turn of events, nodded. They sat on the bench. The man pointed to John's tattered cardboard sign and asked, "What did you mean by used to be someone?" John took a deep breath and said, "I served in the army, risked my life for the country. But now look at me." The man listened intently, his eyes showing a mix of curiosity and something deeper. He then asked, "Were you in the army? May I know your name?" John replied, "John Turner." At the sound of the name, the man's breath hitched. He seemed a bit nervous and asked, "Do you have a son?" This question hit John hard. Memories of his son flooded back. He nodded and whispered, "Yes, his name was Frederick. I used to call him Fred." The man, now with tears in his eyes, couldn't hold back anymore. He hugged John tightly and choked out, "Dad, it's me. I'm Frederick Turner, your son." John was stunned. He couldn't believe his ears. He looked at the man closely, and gradually, he saw the traces of the little boy he remembered in the man's features. Fred explained that he had been looking for John for years. After John disappeared, he never gave up hope. He hired private investigators and followed every lead. He said, "I always knew you wouldn't just abandon us. I found out that Mom left, not you. When I saw your cardboard sign today, it reminded me of your favorite song, and I felt there was something special about you." As they talked, the rain poured heavier. Fred suggested they go to his car to get out of the rain. In the car, Fred played the song, "Used to Be Someone," the same song that John had heard the young musician playing earlier. They both sang along, their voices blending together. John felt a long, lost sense of connection and hope. Fred's SUV pulled up to a magnificent villa. John was in awe. Fred said, "This is my home, and now it's yours too, Dad." They entered the house, and Fred showed John around. In the living room, there was a grand piano. John felt a pang of longing. Fred then took out an old photo album. The first photo was of John and little Fred at Fred's 5th birthday party. They looked through the album, each photo bringing back a flood of memories. After that, Fred showed John pictures of his company and the charities he supported. John listened in amazement as Fred talked about his achievements. Then John said, "Fred, I'm so proud of you, but I don't deserve to be here. I'm a mess, an alcoholic, and I've been living on the streets." Fred looked at John seriously and said, "Dad, you're my father. You've sacrificed so much. You deserve a chance to rest and heal. I know you have PTSD and an alcohol problem. We'll get you the help you need. The government has programs for veterans like you. I'll be with you every step of the way." As they sat in the living room, John's stomach growled loudly, reminding him of his hunger. Fred smiled and said, "You must be starving. Let me make us some food. Do you remember the tomato soup and omelet you used to make for me? I'll try to make them." John nodded, a bit of nostalgia in his eyes. Fred headed to the kitchen, and John, drawn by the aroma, followed him. Standing in the doorway, John watched as Fred cooked, a mix of eagerness and awkwardness in his heart. Fred asked John to taste the soup. John took a spoonful, and the familiar flavor brought back memories of their old kitchen. "It's perfect, just like I remember," John said, his voice filled with emotion. After that, John decided to open up to Fred about his experiences on the street. "Fred, the street is cruel. Even with the money you gave me, they wouldn't serve me because of how I looked," he said, his voice low. "And the war, it left deep scars. I have PTSD. I've been using alcohol to numb the pain." Fred listened intently, his eyes full of compassion. "Dad, I know it's been tough, but we'll face these together. There are programs and treatments for veterans with PTSD and alcohol problems. The government has systems to help you. We'll find the right ones for you." Just then, the butler, Mr. Harrison, came in. Fred introduced John to him and emphasized that John should be treated with respect. Mr. Harrison, a bit surprised, quickly composed himself and said he would prepare a guest room and a warm bath for John. John followed Mr. Harrison upstairs. The room was spacious and comfortable, a far cry from his life on the streets. After a warm bath, he changed into fresh clothes provided by Mr. Harrison. Looking at himself in the mirror, John could hardly recognize the clean, shaven man staring back. Downstairs, Fred had finished preparing dinner. They sat at the dining table, and as they ate, they talked more. The initial awkwardness between them was gradually fading. They shared stories about their lives, filling in the gaps of the years they had been apart. After dinner, John's eyes were drawn to the grand piano again. Fred noticed and asked, "Do you still play, Dad?" John shook his head, saying, "It's been years. I'm not sure I can." But Fred encouraged him, "Give it a try. I'd love to hear you play." Hesitantly, John walked to the piano. He sat down and slowly placed his hands on the keys. At first, his fingers were stiff and the notes were hesitant. But as he continued, muscle memory kicked in. The melody of "Used to Be Someone" filled the room. Fred listened in awe, seeing the transformation in his father. The music seemed to bring back a part of John that had been lost for years. When the song ended, John looked up at Fred, a mixture of surprise and joy on his face. "I didn't think I could still do this," he said. Fred's eyes were shining. "That was beautiful, Dad. I've missed hearing you play." As the evening went on, John felt a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in a long time. He realized that this new life with Fred was a chance for a fresh start. But he also knew that there were challenges ahead, especially dealing with his PTSD and alcohol addiction. However, for the first time in years, he had hope. As the night draped over the luxurious villa like a soft, velvety blanket, John and Fred remained seated in the living room, their conversation flowing like a gentle stream. The warm, ambient light from the chandelier above cast a golden glow, creating a cozy atmosphere that seemed to encourage their deep-seated sharing. John delved deeper into the darkest corners of his street life experiences. He recounted the frigid winter nights when he huddled in alleyways, using a tattered cardboard box as a meager shield against the biting cold. "There were times when I thought I wouldn't make it through the night, Fred. The cold was so intense that it felt like it was seeping into my very bones," he said, his voice laced with a hint of the pain he had endured. He also spoke of the constant humiliation and rejection. "People would look at me as if I was a piece of trash, something to be avoided at all costs. Once, a group of teenagers even threw stones at me, just for the sake of amusement," John added, his eyes clouding over with the memories. Fred listened intently, his jaw clenched in anger and his heart aching for his father. He reached out and placed his hand on John's, offering a silent gesture of comfort. Fred then took his turn to share his life journey. He described the arduous process of building his business from the ground up. "I started with nothing but a dream and a lot of determination. I worked day and night, taking on odd jobs to save up enough money to start my first small venture," he said. There were countless setbacks along the way. He faced financial difficulties, with clients backing out at the last minute and competitors trying to undermine his efforts. "But every time I felt like giving up, I would think of you, Dad. I knew that if I could succeed, I would have a better chance of finding you and bringing you back into my life," Fred said, his eyes glistening with a mix of determination and love. The next morning, John woke up to the soft chirping of birds outside his window. The sunlight streamed through the sheer curtains, creating a dappled pattern on the plush carpet. For a moment, he lay there, disoriented, before the events of the previous day came flooding back. He realized that he was no longer on the cold, hard streets, but in a warm, comfortable bed in his son's home. A sense of peace, long lost and now found, washed over him. Downstairs, the smell of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon wafted through the air. Fred was in the kitchen, humming a tune as he prepared breakfast. When he saw John enter, his face lit up with a broad smile. "Good morning, Dad. I hope you slept well," he said cheerfully. John returned the smile, feeling a sense of normalcy that he hadn't experienced in years. "I slept like a log, Fred. It's been ages since I've had such a restful night," he replied. After breakfast, they decided to take a walk in the garden. The garden was a sight to behold, a veritable oasis of tranquility. Colorful flowers of every hue bloomed in profusion, their sweet fragrance filling the air. Manicured lawns stretched as far as the eye could see, and a small, meandering stream trickled through the center, its gentle sound adding to the peaceful ambience. As they strolled along the garden paths, Fred broached the subject of John's recovery plan. "I've been doing a lot of research, Dad, and I've contacted some of the best experts in PTSD treatment and alcohol rehabilitation. They have a comprehensive program that I think will really help you," he said. Fred explained that the treatment would involve a combination of therapy sessions, both individual and group, as well as medical support to manage the symptoms of alcohol withdrawal. "The first step will be a thorough assessment to understand the extent of your condition, and then we'll develop a personalized treatment plan," he added. John listened intently, a mix of gratitude and trepidation in his heart. "I'm really grateful for all this, Fred, but I'm also a bit scared. I don't know if I can face all those memories again," he said, his voice tinged with anxiety. Fred stopped walking and turned to face his father. "I know it's going to be tough, Dad, but you're not alone in this. I'll be with you every step of the way. And these experts are really experienced. They'll help you through it," he said, his eyes filled with reassurance. In the following days, John began his treatment. The first therapy session was a nerve-wracking experience. He sat in a small, cozy room, facing a kind-looking therapist. As he started to talk about his experiences in the war, the words seemed to catch in his throat. "It was so chaotic, so terrifying. I saw so many of my friends die right in front of me," he said, his voice shaking. The therapist listened patiently, guiding him through the memories, helping him to confront the pain and trauma. There were also group therapy sessions, where John met other veterans who had similar experiences. At first, he was hesitant to open up in front of strangers, but as he listened to their stories, he realized that he was not alone. "I thought I was the only one who felt this way, who had these nightmares. But hearing their stories, I realized that we're all in the same boat," he said. Fred made sure to be there for John as much as possible. He would drive him to and from the therapy sessions, and in the evenings, they would talk about how the day had gone. "How was your session today, Dad?" Fred would ask. John would share his feelings, his fears, and his small victories. "Today, I was able to talk about that one battle without breaking down. It was a small step, but it felt like a huge accomplishment," he would reply. Fred also involved John in his business life. He invited John to attend some of his business meetings, introducing him to his partners and colleagues. At first, John fell out of place like a fish out of water. He was acutely aware of his lack of knowledge about the business world and his unkempt appearance, despite the new clothes Fred had bought for him. But as he started to listen to the discussions, he found himself getting interested. "I never thought I would be interested in business, but listening to you guys talk, it's really fascinating," he said. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a warm, orange glow over the villa, John and Fred sat on the porch, sipping cups of tea. The sky was ablaze with colors, a beautiful canvas of reds, oranges, and purples. John turned to Fred, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Fred, I can't thank you enough for all that you've done for me. You've given me a second chance at life, and I'm going to do my best to make the most of it. I want to be the father you deserve," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Fred placed his hand on John's shoulder. "Dad, you don't need to thank me. You're my father, and I love you. We're in this together, and I know you have the strength to overcome these challenges. You've already come so far, and I'm so proud of you," he said. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, leaving behind a trail of fading light, John felt a new sense of hope. He knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, filled with obstacles and setbacks. But with Fred by his side, he was ready to face whatever the future held. He was determined to overcome his past, to heal his wounds, and to build a new life with his son. This new beginning was a precious gift, and he was going to cherish it with all his heart.
If this story touched you, show your support by liking and subscribing. Your encouragement helps us keep sharing memorable stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.